Welcome to College Football Playoff Top 25, presented by Capital One.
Inside 11 days, 17 hours, and counting till we find out who's in the College Football Playoff. 2 more chances to make your case maximum, unless you're Notre Dame. The Irish have already largely made their case if they can avoid one more pratfall, one that's manned by a bitter rival who would love nothing more than to wreck the Irish dream. And what are we going to see from Ohio State tonight? The Buckeyes very fortunate to still be a one-loss team. They could slip in the rankings. But who has more to play for than the Buckeyes? Stay inside Michigan's head, maybe wreck the Wolverines' dreams while rekindling some of their own if they haven't fallen too far back. You know who might make a move tonight? Washington State. The Cougars could move up and be right on the cusp, on the doorstep of making that top 4. Maybe they get in by a whisker or an upper lip full of them. The top 4 looked like this last week, and there's no reason in the world to think that's going to change tonight. But to accept that as a foregone conclusion in 11 days or so, anything but.
Who's in? With 2 Saturdays until Selection Day, making the playoff is becoming a real possibility. So is being left out. Now, the calculations commence. All the data is being considered. And as each week ticks by, the field narrows and opportunities vanish. Rule number 1, don't lose. Rule number 2, don't quit. An upset disrupts the whole field, leaving every team scrambling, jockeying for position.
You give it all you got!
There will only be 4. Who's in?
Committee just wrapped up its latest meeting. There are 2 more get-togethers scheduled before unveiling the top 4 teams in the College Football Playoff and who will vie for the right to meet in the Orange Bowls and the Cotton Bowls and eventually in Santa Clara for the national championship game. College Football Playoff top 25. Reese Davis, Joey Galloway, David Pollack, and Jesse Palmer. Kirk Herbstreit's here in just a few minutes. We're taking you right up to the start of Duke and Auburn, which I know sounds like a Music City Bowl projection, but instead is the Jim Maui Invitational basketball.
Shots fired early.
It wasn't a shot.
They're going bowling.
It was obvious. It's top 10 matchup in basketball.
Yeah.
What's the most revealing thing you can see tonight? I would imagine it would center around Wazoo, UCF, Ohio State, maybe?
I want to see what they do with UCF. It was a defensive struggle against Temple a few weeks back that made a lot of people question this UCF on defense. Looked much better Saturday night against Cincinnati. Only gave up 1 defensive touchdown. It's been since 2015 since a Group of 5 team has jumped a Power 5 team when they both won. I want to see if they get ahead of Ohio State, who struggled against Maryland.
How about Washington State? I mean, at some point we start saying, all right, I believe. I believe what I see, and every week they've continued to do it offensively. They can score with anybody in the country. There's no doubt about that. They're that good. Their offensive line is sound. Their quarterback is one of the most dynamic players in college football. Defense looks consistent, pretty week-to-week basis. Washington State starts to have a legitimate beef. I should be above LSU. I should maybe be above Oklahoma. They're a team that should be right there on that door. When we have chaos, please, God, when we have chaos, they're a team that hopefully is being mentioned.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at that also with Washington State. And has the committee finally seen enough now to really give this team some respect? I think everyone's always waiting for Washington State to slip up. And week after week, they're proving to us they're a good team. They put up 55 points at halftime against Arizona, which has been a better team in recent weeks. They're a more complete team than Oklahoma. Like Oklahoma, they've got a Heisman candidate playing quarterback. I think when you look at this team right now, they deserve some of that respect. They've got a top 25 win, something Oklahoma may not have after today.
And a loss that was very controversial.
Yeah,
right. It is what it is. It was a bad loss to USC, but if you watch the game, the way the game ended, they should have had a shot to win that game. They were not afforded the right to try to go win.
But they didn't make the field goal that would have tied.
So maybe ahead of
first.
Hey, Kirk Herbstreit is with us now too. Kirk, what do you think will be the most revealing thing that we can find out tonight? We expect the top 4 to look the same.
Yeah, you guys are talking cases of teams like UCF and Washington State, and I think they deserve to definitely have their cases be made as we get ready for Week 13. What about on the other end? Like, what do you do with Oklahoma right now? What do you do with Ohio State? When you're talking about a complete team, I know Oklahoma's winning, and they deserve credit for that. I know Ohio State's finding a way to win. They deserve credit for winning. But I'd have no problem at this point with UCF going by both Ohio State and Oklahoma, and it has more to do with their performance along with UCF. So I would have Washington State up at 6, right behind Georgia, and I'd have UCF probably moving up and moving past Oklahoma and Ohio State. And it has everything to do with, we keep waiting for Oklahoma to become this team that's more complete. But you know the pressure Kyler Murray must go into every game knowing he's got to score 52 points to win every game. Same with Dwayne Haskins. I mean, Ohio State's become that kind of team where they got to score high in the 40s or into the 50s to be able to win games. So I don't think you're seeing complete teams out of those two teams. And when you're splitting hairs and trying to move teams up and down, then I think you can make a very strong case for UCF being a more complete team than both Ohio State and Oklahoma.
Big stages coming up, though, for the teams that you've mentioned. Oklahoma and Ohio State certainly have massive opportunities on rivalry weekend. So let's start showing the rankings. This week's college football playoff rankings brought to you by Capital One. Iowa State, after its loss to Texas, they hang in there at number 25. Pittsburgh going to the ACC championship game. 4 losses. They're in there as well. That's a top 25 win for UCF, but also one for Notre Dame.
It's crazy to see this year the 4-loss teams that are being ranked. I mean, you look in the past and just I don't think that would have happened consistently, but now 3- and 4-loss teams, they've ranked them because they feel like they're better, and that's okay.
And how about Utah State and Boise State? That's a great matchup this weekend in the Mountain West. And if UCF were to slip up in one of their 2 final games, maybe against Houston in a conference championship game, the winner of this game between Utah State and Boise State could be the Group of 5 team playing in a New Year's Six bowl game.
If you get that slip up, and if they were to slip behind the winner of the American, or if it's not UCF, they would have to jump one of those 2 teams. Counting it down from 20, Syracuse plummeted down 8 spots from 12 to 20 after getting blown out by Notre Dame. Northwestern's in the Big Ten championship game. And the mighty Utah student section on its way to the Pac-12 championship game.
Utah without Tyler Huntley comes out and plays a terrific game against Colorado. Surprised everyone that they blew them out. I thought they would win, but a blowout. Utah getting some respect even without their starting quarterback in Tyler Huntley, who went out.
Speaking of respect, how about Northwestern finally getting up into the top 20? I thought it was great. Pat Fitzgerald came out and publicly said how frustrated he was that they were being disrespected going into Minneapolis to play Minnesota, and they took care of business. They continue to take care of business, and we're going to finish 8-4 and probably up near the top 15 in the country as they get ready for the Big Ten championship.
And their protest was coming out shirtless for warm-ups. That's how they made their statement. You saw that. It's pretty outstanding.
Should have taken their shirts off before they played Akron.
Touche. Reese is on fire. Reese is on fire early tonight. He's on fire.
Washington at 16 is important too. Yeah. Apple Cup coming up. Yep. Obviously, Washington State a chance to make some hay.
It's late in the season. I ain't got time for their foolishness.
I fully understand where you're coming from, Reese. But I am happy to see Washington at 16. Yeah. I think that, you know, as we talk about this Washington State team, which everyone's looking at and saying they're a terrific team, they get another chance to prove it against number 16 Washington.
Let's get into the top 15 here. You're right about Washington, by the way, and they've had Washington State's number. Kentucky hanging around. Really good season for Stoops and the guys in Lexington. Texas going to have a chance if they can beat Kansas to go on and play in the Big 12 championship game against either West Virginia or Oklahoma. West Virginia falling after that heartbreaking loss and thrilling game against Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and it's big for Oklahoma having West Virginia at 13. If they can get that win and then avenge really their only loss of the year against Texas in the Big 12 title game, that's all the ammo they're trying to build up to make a case for themselves against the potential Big Ten champion.
And a 3-loss Penn State team being at number 12 is going to matter to the Big Ten champion eventually if it comes out of the East especially. You know, as we look at these resumes in Ohio State and Michigan, if whoever wins that game, if you look at their resume moving back, that Penn State being at number 12 is important.
And if we're thinking about, and we're talking about Washington State versus Oklahoma, those teams in the next realm, look what Oklahoma has left. They could possibly have West Virginia and Texas left. Right. So we might look at that and say, we think Washington State's a more complete football team. They got some chances right there. Oklahoma has some big chances to make a statement to teams that matter to the committee.
I don't think there's any question that the resume is going to look better for Oklahoma if the Sooners can get there, beat West Virginia on the road, and then get to the Big 12 championship game and win that. Let's look at the top 10. At number 10, Ohio State.
Oh, you know what that means?
You know what that means?
Yes, it does.
That means
UCF is
UCF. And it hasn't happened since 2015, where a group of five has jumped a Power 5 team that have both won. But Ohio State, you look at that win by Ohio State, yeah, shaky.
Herbie, you want in here on that?
No, I was about to say, he said they've never seen a group of five. You're about to see a group of five jump up in here. And like we said before this started, they deserve it. They deserve to move up. As much as how Ohio State has looked, and combine that with how UCF has looked. So this is deserving wherever they end up here.
At number 9, in front of the Buckeyes is UCF. What do you think about that? At 10-0, you know, Michael Resco, the commissioner of the American, made a really insightful comment about respect coming in increments. This is one of those moments right here. It's not just winning at Cincinnati. It's not just College game day and 20,000 people or whatever it was. Here's a step up, move up with 2 spots. Only one of them because the team in front of them lost. This is a sign of respect.
But I think you have to give Josh Heupel and UCF a ton of credit, guys. It was a huge stage for them and an opportunity really to showcase their brand. I'd argue that outside their win against Pitt, that was the best win they had all year against a ranked
and
Cincy
looking
team.
better every week.
Yeah, just balanced on offense and defense, the way they're playing. I think
Special teams was awesome.
I think it's a combination of who they played and the way they look. They deserve it.
I know Pitt's ranked now. I think that Cincinnati win was better than the win against Pitt because of Pitt then, you know, wasn't playing. It had just gotten beat by 45 by Penn State. That win, Cincinnati was playing well. That was a really good win Saturday night for UCF, Kirk.
Yeah, and Reese, I would just add to that, Bud. I think it's the scheme that they run, the quarterback that they have, the speed around that quarterback that they have, and as you guys touched on, special teams, defense, and it's not just to me. I don't care about a 23-game win streak. This has to do with this team right now, where they're playing, how they're playing, and comparing them to these other teams that are hovering at 7, 8, 9, and 10. And like I said, I wouldn't have any problem with them up above Oklahoma, but for now, they got to sit here at number 9.
Odds maker that we all know, Danny Sheridan, said last year's UCF team would be a double-digit favorite over this year's UCF team. Washington State still at number 8. I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest.
I'm not very surprised. LSU still sitting there at number 7, I'm assuming. But this Oklahoma team, they've been the same team all along. And so they didn't show us anything different than giving up 40 points to Kansas. That's what they've been.
Yeah, there's LSU still sitting at number 7. I thought Washington State would go past.
It's also fair to say this. That's LSU's ceiling. They're only going to go backwards. All these teams behind them have opportunities to climb. Washington State beats Washington. There is no reason on God's green earth that LSU should be above them. I don't think they should be. So I see LSU still there, and that makes sense to the committee for now. Washington State still has an opportunity to jump over LSU. LSU doesn't have an opportunity to climb.
I think the biggest issue with Washington State right now is still the non-conference schedule. Having not played a Power 5 opponent in non-conference, I think is really the only thing hindering them, but I agree. You know, they beat Washington, they beat a ranked Utah team in the Pac-12 title game, then they're going to get a chance to move on.
Kirk?
Yeah, I would just add that LSU, you know, it's nice that they're ranked, but as we get closer to the finish line, they become more and more irrelevant. If Washington State takes care of the Apple Cup, they take care of a Pac-12 championship, there's no question they would go eventually right around LSU. It's almost like LSU is just holding up a spot right now where potentially conference champions would eventually, in a couple weeks, go right by them. So if you're an LSU fan, it's exciting to see your name up there. They play A&M this week, but I wouldn't hold my breath if I were an LSU fan and try to think about, well, if this happened and that happens, maybe we could. No, you can't. This is as good as it gets, and people behind you are going to go right by you if, in fact, they win out.
They're thinking. They're probably thinking, you know, New Year's 6. Great year.
Great year.
New Year's 6. Take a giant step forward.
They should be jacked about their run they had this season.
Absolutely.
Awesome
there were people in the preseason saying, you know, by the time they get to Alabama, they'd be, you know, 3-5.
No, major question marks. Transfer quarterback coming in with Joe Burrow and the way he's played in this offense. Yeah, they're all right.
And this might be the last time we talk about the Bayou Bengals, so congratulations to them.
Great season.
Teams are going to start going past them. Let's look at the top teams at number 1. Alabama remains number 1. Tied at halftime with the Citadel, and then scored like 40 in a row. Clemson is number 2, also a little sluggish against Duke early, and then blew out the Blue Devils a little bit later on. Both have rivalry games coming up. Fighting Irish stay at number 3. Notre Dame, they beat USC over, locked, and well-deserved, by the way. That was a very, very strong performance against Syracuse in Yankee Stadium. At number 4, we assume Michigan's going to stay there, and they do. Wolverines, an opportunity against Ohio State to break that losing streak. Georgia, even if Georgia fans think they ought to be number 4, doesn't matter. They're going to play Alabama in the SEC championship game and get your chance. And Oklahoma proving that you can indeed give up 40 to Kansas and still hold your spot as long as you have Kyler Murray putting up all the numbers that he puts up. So, Kirk, we're still sitting here looking with the top 6 holding firm.
There they are. What do we have for us? No, but I'll say this. I mean, imagine Brian Kelly being able to walk into that locker room where we enjoyed the Chiefs game last night in the Rams. He's going to walk into that visiting locker room right before his team takes the field and say, fellas, 60 minutes. We don't need the committee. We don't need any help. We don't need any tricks. It's just reality. You are 60 minutes. The ball is in our court. 60 minutes away from securing this magical season and heading off to the playoff. And that's got to feel good for Notre Dame, the players, the fans, everybody, that that's their reality. These other teams got to worry about conference championships, and for Notre Dame, they got to head out to L.A. to take on an SC team that's been struggling, obviously, in a rivalry game and take care of business, and they're in. But these other doomsday scenarios are still out there that we've talked about over the last couple of days. But Notre Dame's the one team we know for sure that this weekend they can secure their spot.
And we hope some of those scenarios come to fruition for our benefit and for the show's benefit and for everybody's
The show's still great no matter what, against perfection.
Okay, sure. But here's the thing. There's been a lot of talk the last several weeks, and some people are annoyed with it. I might be one of them that gets a little bit annoyed with it. The Michigan, Notre Dame, different teams. Notre Dame is clearly showing you how good they have been down the stretch of the season. It wasn't close with Northwestern. Look at the score. They thumped Syracuse. Don't give me Michigan and Notre Dame. Michigan's playing a lot better than they are right now. Notre Dame has been playing great for the last week after week after week. We got to stop questioning them. If they win, it doesn't matter, they're in.
And that's why it's key, too, because they're peaking at the right time right before the playoff. And that was a statement going 36-3 against the number 12 team in the country. On a weekend where the rest of the top 4 teams all had issues, including Alabama against the Citadel, which nobody saw coming. So I know there was a thought that maybe they would have to look good and win with style points on the road at USC, but the way they're playing on both sides of the ball, and that statement, that win. And we'd seen Alabama have that statement win against LSU. Clemson did it against Boston College a few weeks ago. Michigan's on their revenge tour. I think that was huge for Notre Dame. It's been a lot of travel this month.
Yeah.
Back and forth across the country. Very impressive. It's unbelievable. You're right. They win no matter how they do it. Dub, you're in.
Yeah, we've been questioning the gap between Alabama, Clemson, and then everyone else. I would say that Notre Dame is closing the gap.
I agree.
And to be in that conversation of those teams. And Michigan will have their opportunity this weekend to do the same thing that Notre Dame just did against Syracuse last weekend. A bit of a struggle. I wouldn't say Alabama struggled. It was fun for about a half.
It was
to watch
10
of the half.
It was enjoyable. It was fun.
Not enjoyable for Nick Saban.
They weren't worried. And so Michigan didn't look great against Indiana, but they'll also have a chance to erase that and make the same kind of statement. And we have that opportunity. And as far as the show is concerned, all I really want is the best 4 teams. I don't really care what we have to do on this show, but if we can get the best 4 teams, which right now we have the best 4 teams in the top 4. And if these teams win out, I'm perfectly comfortable coming up here for another hour with you guys and talk about nothing.
Had it, baby.
Or something.
Kirk?
Joe, you don't want to stir up any controversy or mix it up with.
I just want the 4
Reese.
best. That's all that matters. 4 best teams. I don't care how it gets there.
I think we're all in agreement there. I think every year that's obviously the goal of the committee, and I think that's where, as you said right now, I mean, I'd be very hard for anybody to argue that, Georgia maybe could argue that, hey, what about us? Don't forget about us. I know the Bear is very fired up this week about Georgia almost kind of being a forgotten team, even though they're sitting at 5. I don't know how they're forgotten, Bear, when they're sitting there at 5. But he feels that they're being a little bit forgotten because all the focus is on Alabama and the SEC, and it's almost just a foregone conclusion to put Michigan in there because they're a Big Ten team. And I'll let Bear state his case Saturday on game day. I don't feel that personally. I feel that Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Michigan right now, as we get ready for rivalry weekend, those are the best 4 teams, and we'll see if they can continue to win and end up these next 2 weeks. That would be a crazy Final Four. You imagine if you had Michigan, and Alabama is one game, and Clemson and Notre Dame as the other. If it ends up finishing this way, I don't think a whole lot of college football fans would complain about that. It'd be pretty good matchups.
You know, but just when you think you have all the answers, somebody changes the questions. This time last year, we had 4 undefeated teams. We have 4 undefeated teams now. You know what happened last year and this week? Number 1 and number 2 went down on rivalry week. Just saying.
Number 1 bounced back much better than number 2.
Yeah. Number
1 did okay.
2, I'm not sure number 2 is.
We haven't seen number 2 since.
They still haven't bounced back.
Number 1 took a bye week, got healthy, came back and won the whole daggone thing. That worked out well for them.
Yeah. I've got a little scenario for the current number 2 right now and why Clemson's game against South Carolina is of the utmost importance for them. Rob Mullins, College Football Playoff Committee Chair, is going to join us in just a little bit. He will be live from inside the committee room. We've got some questions for him. It's not necessarily to do with the top 4, but some of the other things. And Pollock is craving the chaos. What if we wind up with 3 loss conference champions in Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12?